Welcome back to your Event Basics training. In this second part, we will go through building your events team, setting your schedule, and choosing your event pricing strategy. No one person can do everything by themselves. As we know by now, planning events takes the careful consideration of many steps and details. Building the right planning team, which may include both volunteers and paid professionals, ascertains that there is a balanced approach to executing your events. Endless Events notes that having your team in place allows multiple activities to happen simultaneously, assists with problem solving, contributes a variety of skills to a project, and reduces stress. They suggest that an event team include an event chair as well as a committee or task force for each of the 4 key areas: programs, creative, operations, and budget. Let's look first at our event chair. Someone has to set the tone and lead the ship. It's important that the individual in this role understand the event goals and then share that vision with the rest of their team. They must also be supportive, making sure to back up other committee leaders, assist volunteers, and provide encouragement. Next up is the programs team. This committee is seen as the administrative group of your planning team. They are the ones who will plan, execute, and manage the fine details and logistics that make the event actually happen. Their duties typically include things like estimating attendee numbers, venue selection, working with catering, setting the schedule, and so on. Endless Events advises that the committee be small, maybe as few as 2 people. Now we have our creative committee. Marketing, media management, attendee engagement, and branding are all responsibilities that fall upon this important work group. They oversee event documentation, including photography and videography, social media management, developing materials, event branding, maintaining the event website, and much more. In general, this committee's size will likely vary depending on the scope and size of your event. When it comes to actual boots-on-the-ground work at the event, your operations team is going to be where you'll turn. Unlike many of the other work groups, this one may include external parties such as vendors or event venue staff. Their responsibilities and committee size are also going to depend on the type of event. Their duties might include things like setup, on-site registration, informational assistance, and much, much more. And finally, the budget committee. This critical team is charged with overseeing the budget, payments, cost estimates, sponsorship funding, financial record keeping, and other money-related aspects. It's important to get this group involved from the very beginning, Endless Events advises, because it's the budget that dictates so much of the event. Like our last few groups, the size of the team will depend on how big your event is, but it will typically include your treasurer on some level. A few other best practices to keep in mind. Maintain a schedule or timeline of who is doing what when. Choose your committee leaders very carefully. Practice strong communication between your leaders where appropriate. Make sure that everyone has the same overarching event goals. And finally, share the excitement. From an event that lasts just an hour to one that spans several days, it's important that careful planning go into building out the schedule for each of your club events. Like most things covered in our trainings, there's no one way to put together an event schedule. It truly is going to depend on the scope and goals of your event. However, Eventbrite has put together a few questions to guide planners as they put together the flow of their event. First, how long will your event last? Once you've decided on your rough time parameters, Eventbrite suggests breaking it down into small time chunks, typically 30 to 60-minute slots, to make planning more manageable. The longer an event, the more important this style becomes as it helps prevent attendees or guests from becoming overwhelmed. Second, what activities need to be part of your schedule? This is where you should spend time compiling a detailed list of everything that needs to fit into your schedule. Remember to think about all of your stakeholders so that nothing is missed. Next up, how will you communicate your schedule? For a short webinar or a regular club meeting, a simple email will typically suffice. However, when it comes to something like a formal fundraiser or a multi-day regional convention, the schedule may need to be a little more prominent, whether it's a printed program or a full event website. And finally, what part will people play? This question again speaks more to longer events. You don't want to overload your guests, leaving them feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. That's why it's so important to think about their overall experience as you put together your event timing. Pricing is a critical but difficult part of putting together any event. In fact, it's a very delicate balance. If you aim too high, you'll rule out many potential attendees from being able to come, thus directly impacting your attendance goals. On the other hand, if you underprice your tickets, you run the risk of not turning a profit. Therefore, the Balanced Small Business urges planners to consider two factors when choosing a pricing strategy: anticipated costs and anticipated attendance. There are many industry standard approaches to registration pricing, including retail pricing. This follows the same formula that traditional retail companies have used for decades. To determine your ticket price, you will take your total expenses, add the budgeted profit margin, and divide the sum by your lowest projected attendance figures. Then we have market pricing. This approach works backwards, meaning planners start with the ticket price and then set their budget accordingly. The balance says that perceived value plays a critical role with this strategy. And finally, there's limited access pricing. This price strategy centers upon a tiered structure where guests receive more value and benefits the more that they pay. It encompasses the standard basic versus VIP packages that many events offer. In the end, the pricing strategy you ultimately choose is going to vary depending on the type of function. When it comes to your fundraisers, you're really going to be focused on making sure that the profits are higher. With something like a webinar, your expenses are likely fairly low comparatively, and you may not be as concerned with what you're going to charge, if anything at all. Pricing an online-only event follows many of the same best practices as one held in person, but it also offers some unique challenges. In particular, it can be especially difficult to prove your value when attendees are used to gathering face-to-face. Excel Events encourages planners to consider the following: expense savings, both by the event itself and by attendees; perceived value of the event, or what attendees feel they are getting out of attending. This comes in contributions to a cause they love, what they've learned, being entertained, networking opportunities, and more. The newness of the online format. Without a proven track record, you will likely want to start on the lower end with pricing and then slowly increase it as the event gains popularity. And tiers. They can be a great opportunity for online environments. Your offerings may even include a free level. This concludes our two-part training on event basics. As a reminder, you can find our full resources on this topic in the Club Event Planning Guide, which is available for download in our online member center at members.sertoma.org. There you can also access the other trainings in this series through the training library. If you'd like to get advice from your fellow members or ask staff questions, make sure to join us in our members-only group on Facebook using the link on your screen.